When the Kachina arrive, it is going to be a joyous time, and part of the reason for that is the gift giving. As part of the gift giving, the girls are going to receive dolls and dance wands and baskets. The boys are going to receive prayer sticks and rattles. I want to focus a little bit on the Kachina dolls because those are things that you're going to see in museums. Penn has some, for example, in the University Museum. They are also going to be readily available now for sale, because sometime around the 20th century they become a popular item for the tourist trade. Again, these are not the ritual objects that are used, but I'm going to suggest that in certain ways they are pretty close to the ideas of the Kachinas. We'll see a sample in a moment. Let me suggest that generally speaking, the Kachina carvings have become increasingly naturalistic, specifically because today there is an interest in selling to the general public, and the Western taste is for naturalism. Before I leave this painting and we actually start to look at Kachinas, I would like to point out we have a series of very well-controlled, a line essentially, of well-defined and well-controlled masked dancers. These would be the men. Over here, I want you to see a little more rowdy, a little rowdier. Those are the Kasharis, those are the clowns, and we're going to take a look at them individually in a moment. But for right now, let me take you to examine some of the Kachinas themselves, beginning with probably the most famous of all of them. This is one of the most well-known of the Kachinas. His name is Kokopelli, and I've borrowed from the web that description of Kokopelli over on the left that you can take a look at your leisure. I also have two images of Kokopelli for us today. One of them is a Kachina doll that is located in a museum. It's in the Brooklyn Museum of Art. And the other is the much more modernized image of Kokopelli that I think you've all come to at least recognize, and that is in the lower right. This has become a very popularized graphic design image that's actually associated with the desert Southwest and is used to promote tourism. So this is a Kachina that has spread into the modern world, the world of the 21st century, in a user-friendly way, without its original context of ritual. So what was the original meaning of this particular Kachina? He's shown as a hunchback figure, usually playing a flute or making music in some way. The hunchback part, and that's why I have this detail over here, so that you can see that his back kind of bows outward, is a reference to the fact that he's bringing gifts. These gifts in particular reference fertility. They can be seeds for planting. They can also be unborn children. So he really is associated with fertility, bringing fertility for humans as well as for plants and for animals. He is also an individual who is associated with music making, with joyousness, and with dance. As a part of that, he is also considered something of a trickster because of his, in my text it says, his carefree nature, but his playfulness, the use of music being a part of that. And consequently, he's also associated with kind of a saint-like figure for actual musicians. In the carved image of Kokopelli that I have for us right now, he is holding a rattle, and I guess I'd like you to associate him specifically with influencing in a positive way the cycles of agriculture and also of childbirth. In other words, bringing fertility for everyone. The images of Kokopelli in the Pueblo region are very, very ancient. He appears in rock carvings, and originally images of Kokopelli, as you might guess, indicated his maleness and his sexual potency with the inclusion of a penis or genitalia. Under the influence of the friars, essentially the religious orders from the West who came in, they encouraged the carvers to tone down this aspect of Kokopelli. So we have a rather different image of Kokopelli today. And in particular, the modern version shows him, I'm going to say primarily as a hunchback, music maker of great joy, who brings spring and drives winter away. These are two more to take a look at, including figure 2.26, which is located in our textbook. The Kachinas then, and these are both Kachina dolls, which are representations of specific Kachinas. The Kachinas are believed to come down every spring from the mountain to the villages to bring song, to bring dance, and to give gifts, and of course to bring springtime. And again, they're the spirits essentially of the divine, of the deities, of aspects of nature, of animal spirits, and also of your ancestors. The dolls that depict the Kachinas are carved by the men, and they are given to their daughters. Originally, these Kachina dolls would have been teaching devices that were intended to be hung on the wall. So they were intended to help the female children to learn about their religious beliefs, their history, and to be constantly reminded of their traditions. These original forms, and I'm going to say the one on the left is probably earlier than the one that's on the right. These original forms would have been flatter, would have been stiffer, and I'm sorry the example I have for you has lost part of the arms on the left. This is a figure late 19th century, we believe, that represents, I'm going to call her Butterfly Maiden, and this is a figure that would have been associated with ideas of fertility and with rain. As we take a look at her, I'd also like you to see that this figure is wearing a squash blossom necklace. Butterfly Maiden tends to be kind of formal and flat. I can easily imagine this being hung against the wall, by the way, associating the image with rain, with the harvest, and at the very top of this enormous headdress that the female figure is wearing, we have kind of mountain-like shapes on the top, and those are associated with the mountains and with the sky. And of course that deals with where the location of the Kachinas as they're coming down to the villages, but it also specifically deals with sending prayers to the sky and the origin of rain, which does come from the sky. So these are appropriate symbolic images to go along with Butterfly Maiden. Okay. Butterfly Maiden is one of the shalakos, and that's what we have on the right in our textbook, 2.26 again. That particular example is early 20th century, a little bit later. It comes from the St. Louis Museum of Art. I think you could see it's a little more freestanding, a little more naturalistic. What are the shalakos? They're figures that appear in the dance, and they're a lot of fun, I think, because they're very, very tall. I'm not sure of the apparatus that is used, but they are elevated like to 8 feet in the air, and there is an apprentice or an assistant that participates in this. The arms of the shalaku on our right are hidden because those arms would be underneath the costume, actually working a part of the regalia or the gear. If you take a look at his head, you can see his mouth actually looks kind of like a birdie beak, and that would have been able to clank or clatter in the performance. And I'm assuming he was making that happen with strings, probably underneath the costume that he was wearing. So these are great theater. We also, I think, can recognize the increase in naturalism. We think that this is a part of, again, influence that comes from the Christian church, because the friars or the priests were encouraging local carvers to create images of saints, and those images of saints were following very Western three-dimensional traditions. So coming out of this and the continuing way in which these objects evolve, particularly in terms of the tourist market, let me show you a contemporary action figure. This is a bean dancer, and it has a figure in movement, being elevated essentially on one foot. This is not very traditional, but this is a kind of very three-dimensional, very naturalistic, and very action-packed image that does appear successful in terms of the economics of the pueblos. The Kachina dolls will spread from the Hopi, who usually get credit for being most intimately associated with these dolls, to other pueblos and also to the Navajo, people who will be producing these without necessarily engaging in the rituals, but having an interest, a shared interest in the economic rewards of creating these as tourist objects. In addition, they are going to be used by very serious artists in the 21st century in works of art I would like to share with you now that are appearing in major museums with pretty sophisticated modern, postmodern interpretations.